for tuning in to watch another video on EVE Online in 3D. Let's jump right in. So we're going to start by talking about luminance and global illumination. Now there's a reason for this. So let's just quickly go into our options, and you'll see that default light is on, and I'm just using standard rendering engine. So if I say go to that, you will see that there is a reflective ball here. That's good and fun. However, it's not actually being lit. It's kind of an illusion. If I take off the default light and hit render again, you'll notice that you're not seeing anything but the reflection itself. Now the reason for this is twofold. One is if we look at our sphere, you will notice in our texture that the luminance is over 100. So in the ideal world, any value over 100 actually turns that into a light as opposed to just being glowy. So why isn't it working? In order to get that to work, you actually need to enable global illumination. If we give that a render, it'll be a little bit longer, because what it'll actually do is calculate all the actual lighting that's going on. So why am I showing you this, you're probably wondering. When you're doing your ship lights and what have you, there are times when you may want to use global illumination, times that it makes sense when you're doing close-ups of ships flying by each other or flying through, say, a nebula, which is very foggy. You may also want it when you're doing lasers, because lasers kind of have a light of their own and can affect other things. Alright, so from this render here, you'll see that it actually became a light source, and you can see some of the grid from our scene, which you couldn't see previously. Okay, but it did take a little while. Another option you have, instead of doing global illumination, is you can do physical rendering. Physical rendering, I'm just going to put it on progressive, is physically accurate, which is kind of exciting. And you'll notice it's the same type of thing, though, that you're not getting it actually set up as global illumination, which is no good. So really, at the end of the day, those are your choices. Now the reason I showed you that is because what a lot of people do is they fake it with lights. For lasers and what have you, they just attach lights in the appropriate place. And what you're going to see today is we're actually going to do something very similar with engines. Today is all about creating engines. Okay? So I'm just going to start right off the bat. Sorry, I should have had this better prepped, but that's okay. And I'm going to turn off the ones we don't want to look at, and we're just going to do a step-by-step on this. Okay. So we've got our firetail again, our handy firetail. And what you're going to notice here is that I have created an Omni-Light. This Omni-Light is 200% strength. It's volumetric, and I've made it orange in color. Okay, under details, nothing fancy there. Visibility, I've created some fall off. You'll notice that it's not a perfect circle. I've extended it. There's a reason for that. If you go under noise, you're going to see that there's some soft turbulence, and I'm just using a regular amount of octaves. There's nothing horribly exciting there. Basically what that creates is just a nice little bit of what looks like engine smoke type of thing. Okay, I've also added a lens flare. You'll see this is Sun 1, a brightness of 20%. Scaled it, gave it a reference size, nothing horribly exciting. Now you can position this as close to the center of your first engine, this top engine here, as you want. And essentially what happens is, I'll just give this a quick render. Let me check my settings really quick. Okay. I'm just going to stick with standard, because the other thing with global illumination and physical rendering is it takes a much longer time to render out. And as we slowly progress through these and get to animation, you're going to find that the quicker the render time, the more productive you're going to be, and actually get to have some fun with animations inside of Cinema 4D. And ultimately that's where we're going to get to, is doing some fun spaceship animations. Okay, so as this is rendering, you can see that it's got a nice little gaseous look to it, as if fuel is igniting and swirling, or it's mixing with space dust, or whatever you want to say. And again, as always, it's artistic interpretation. This is how I've learned to do it from Psycho over at Eve Outtakes. He's a brilliant Cinema 4D artist, and he shared this with me. I think it's more than adequate and looks pretty damn good, especially in animation. There are some other techniques I've explored. We'll look at one of those today, which is more for fun than for anything. I haven't gotten too far into it, but we will take a look at a Cinema 4D plugin called Turbulence FD. Okay, so what you're going to see when this finishes is that it's going to saturate the colors, and I'll show you that after. Okay, the lens flare gets added at the end, so essentially you've got this brilliant bright explosion of fire. Fantastic. And the way we accomplish that in our settings is with color correction. I've added 48% saturation. You really don't even need to worry about the contrast, I just put it in there for fun. And lens effects, so that'll render out your lens effects, and then you get this color correction that just saturates everything, because Eve is very vibrant, I find. So that's our first light. Now our second light is going to be a parallel spotlight, and this parallel spotlight is also orangish in color. I've given it a brighter intensity than what we gave the main engine burst. We'll just take a quick peek at that. And you can see that it starts as well from the beginning of where the engine trail would be. Now this time I'm just going to do a render region just to save us a little bit of time. So I'll just render that section. And what you'll see again is that I've made it volumetric. Okay, and you can see here how the colors start to blend together, and it kind of creates a very cool engine trail for the Firetail. Yeah, I know that rhymed. My apologies for that. So there you go. So there's two parts to it. Now the third part that we're going to add, actually I'll just show you the details of this first, sorry. So again, it's a 300% parallel spot with volumetrics. Nothing fancy. There's no noise on it. There's nothing on it. It's just some visibility, outer distance, etc., etc. There's nothing horribly exciting there. Our third and final light is also a parallel spot, 100% intensity, also with volumetrics. Okay, no noise, nothing like that. Just a very basic type of setup. And you'll see that that tail goes a lot further, but it actually isn't noticeable the entire way. And again, this is what I've found makes the best blend. It was handed to me and seems just to work well. And honestly, I don't really question my mentors too much when I agree with the technique they use. Okay, so we'll just let that render out. And there you go. You essentially have a nice looking trail for what you're doing. So let's apply that to the other engines on the Firetail. Now all I've done here is I've duplicated the exact same setup and attached it to the lower engine at the back. Okay, and then I've duplicated that, shrank it down for the side jets, and you'll see that they're much thinner, much smaller. And again, I've done the same thing here. Now if we give our final image a quick render, you should end up with our final product today. And that really didn't take long at all. So you've got one Omni light with volumetrics applied, two parallel spotlights. Now the white parallel spotlight is your inner light. It goes inside of the orange parallel spot. And of course you can make these any colors you want, like we've learned previously. It's your ships, it's your art. Depending on what race or what ship you're on, they typically do vary in game. I just eyeball it for visual reference. And we'll take a quick peek and see where we end up here. Now another fun thing that's good about this is it's very easy to animate a flickering engine trail. Typically what I'll do in a situation like that, and actually I'll talk about that, there's our final render today. Very exciting. Not too much to it at all. So Let's talk about animation just for a quick second. Now what you can do, and I usually don't do it to the main light, I'll just do it to the other lights, is I'll apply an espresso tag. And I'll drag the light in there. And then what I'll grab from over here is I'll search for noise. And I'll take the noise and put it in. I'll attach these two things. And under general, I'll choose intensity. Now intensity is a lot of fun because basically all that's going to do, I'll choose positive only, that's going to change the value of your light over time. And if I just play this, you'll see how it skips up and down, and that's going to cause flicker. But that's not really anywhere fast enough for flicker. So frequency, let's bump that up to 5. Choose our light, and you'll see that that flickers a lot more, which to me is a lot more believable. Now, I'm not happy with the size of this particular one because this was a 300% light and now it's been reduced to something a lot less. So if we increase our scale, say to 6, and go back and increase our amplitude, say to 5, now you have much greater values. Okay? So you see it jumps around closer to where we want it to be. And you can either do that for one light and just copy it across all, which you'd need to, of course, attach each light properly. And what that's going to do is create a simultaneous flickering, which isn't always as realistic. So I actually spend the time and do each light individually. It takes a little bit more time, but gives nicer results. Okay, so we're just going to exit that. This file is included with the tutorial. And we're going to look at Turbulence FD by Jawset Computing. Now it's the exact same thing, but what I want to do is show you what this looks like in preview. And essentially all I've done is I've attached a cylinder, which I've disabled, but there's your cylinder. I just stuck a cylinder there, attached a Turbulence FD container, and made my cylinder an emitter. Gave it the default temperature and just changed the buoyancy direction. So instead of trying to go up, it decided to go out. And what that gives you in preview mode is this. So you get your initial big thrust explosion, as if you've just started up the engine, and you'll see how it tapers very realistically, and it's honestly quite sexy. And there you go. So you end up having what looks to be believable. Now what we'll do is we'll take just a quick render of that, and I'm using the demo version, so you will see the Jawset watermark. And I'm going to have to play with this a bit because right now this is just straight fire. It's not quite what I want. You can apply your own texturing to this. So I am going to play with that a bit more and see if I can get something a little more believable as an engine as opposed to just fire shooting out of the ass of the Firetail. Although that kind of has a nice little poetic sound to it. You'll also notice, hopefully immediately, that this is a great plugin for doing things like explosions or ships on fire, because you can really apply this to any object and put it anywhere on the ship you want, which is something I'm working on in animation. But still, I'm sure it can be done up as an engine trail as well, and I will be getting to that eventually. So that's the end of that file, and again, this will be included, but it won't work for you if you don't have the demo version of Turbulence FD, which you can get for free at Jawset Computing. I'll put a link for that in the file somewhere. And really, I know that seems like a short one, but I did hit you with a lot of information there. I do thank you as always for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. Fly strong.